And here we are in the game 3 of a best of 3 between the red Protoss player in the bottom left-hand corner of the map Newkirk district, Shadyr, against his arch nemesis in the right-hand corner, the blue Terran, Cricket. I really wish that it sounded like a cricket, actually. So Newkirk district is an interesting map. It's symmetrical around this axis, the vertical axis. And it has a plethora of expansions. However, the expansions are not all easily taken. The natural is quite easy to defend. However, this third is actually quite difficult. This large building makes it quite difficult to secure an expansion there if the other player is being aggressive, because they can simply run behind this and go and attack your natural and your main. So it's important to note that. And also, the distance by air is long, but it's much more direct than going all the way around. And this watchtower will be important consideration to watch. So the first game went 1-0 in favor of Shadyr, with some very aggressive 5-gate robo proxy pylon aggression happening close to the 8 or 9 minute mark. And then the second game was a much longer drawn out game where Cricket took the advantage by successfully defending a pretty large attack force at his second base, and was able to take that advantage and carry it right over to the opponent's front door. So it'll be interesting to see how this third game goes. We do have Cricket with a much earlier scout. In fact, I don't believe that Shadyr has scouted at all. How this is a one-player or two-player map, so he does know that Cricket is here regardless of the fact that he knows nothing of its existence. Now Cricket just getting some basic timings. He notes that the pretty standard gas timings, perhaps a little bit early. Usually you'd see this thrown down at approximately the same time that the cybernetics core is thrown down, right at 3 minutes. But this way he will have plenty of gas to throw down some maybe additional sentries. So Shadyr now getting his scout out, this bold probe venturing out into the unknown, whereas Cricket is retreating with his and is attempting to simply decoy a worker off of the worker line. Back at home, once again Cricket doing very good job at placing supply depots to give extra vision of the map, and is just simply macroing up, working on his production, morphing an orbital command, building another barracks, and putting on a tech lab. So this could be a very interesting 2-gate opening, or two racks opening. It just depends on what is happening. So this gas has been down for quite some time. He does have enough gas to do concussive shell or throw down a very quick factory. It just depends on what exactly he will be doing. Now Cricket, noting that this worker was making his way up, and with a good choice, he denies the scouting for Shadyr. So Shadyr is actually completely in the dark about what is going on in his opponent's base. So for all he knows, he may be completely at a disadvantage. There might be 2-port Banshee coming in, or something else very exciting. Now interesting, a fast Reaper in Wings of Liberty, a game such as this, it's very uncommon actually to see fast Reaper, particularly against Protoss, because of the relative strength of the Stalker against the Reaper. They also have a pretty high movement speed and are able to, they don't take any extra damage from the Reaper, and with their long range they're able to pretty much keep them out. However, Shadyr is pretty supply blocked right now. He is building 2 additional pylons, so that will slow him down significantly. He does have a much higher supply, but it's mostly in workers, but Zealots take up actually a pretty large amount of supply for a single unit. The Zealot here at the Watchtower will probably make short work of this Marine unless Cricket manages to control this exactly as he should. Now watching this small engagement, Shadyr, had he been watching the minimap, should know that this is actually going to be happening. And instead, Cricket starting to take out, or attempt to take out, this Zealot, however, not even losing the shields. Now Shadyr, instead of opting for the more traditional natural expansion, he goes for a Ninja Expo, hoping that his opponent will simply not scout. There are 2 Reapers out on the map right now. Remember, Reapers do plus damage to light It's actually a very potent attack against light units, and it has a very potent building attack as well in Wings of Liberty. So if left unchecked, a group of Reapers can do substantial damage to a base. However, looking around, it appears that both players are merely teching up. There is no expansion on the way yet for Cricket, so he will be substantially behind in his second base timings. But it appears that neither player at this point has the ability to really make use of a second base in terms of workers. Now, obviously, getting a faster second base will mean that you will be able to double produce workers and build a much larger number of workers much more quickly. But initially, the investment will not pay off nearly as quickly as if they had been chrono boosting more heavily and continuing to produce workers. So the Reaper speed is going down. That was probably what this factory was initially built for. He did actually run right past the watchtower without taking this out. Now, if Shadyr was watchful with his workers, he would have known that this attack is coming, and it looks like he did in fact notice the minimap. Now it looks like Cricket's going to be able to take out one worker and then simply die to stalkers. So that harassment was unfortunately not as effective as Cricket would hope. This blunder running past the Xel'Naga tower without taking out the worker was pretty substantial. And now actually Shadyr knows that this Reaper is at this watchtower, or knows that he lost it to a Reaper. So unless Cricket decides to move out, this could be quite a problem, and he'll continue to lose another unit. Now Shadyr, he's produced a observer and is making his way into his base for, actually I think this is the first time in the game, now seeing what tech is going on. He sees,
ready for dust off.
Essentially, he sees the medevac. Now medevac could mean a number of things. It could be medevac drops. It could just be the fact that you want to be able to heal up your army. But the fact that this game has actually been relatively passive so far, and the fact that Shadyr is already on 2 bases and has control of the watchtowers bodes well for Shadyr's results in this game. He is continuing to produce workers. Once again, chrono boost energy is very high. Could be utilized better, producing or working on upgrades or producing more probes. But it appears both players being very respectful of the other player and not really willing to go out and take their initiative. 2 bunkers being thrown down. There's not actually a command center on the way yet for Cricket. There it goes. Now, 11-minute command center is actually pretty late. So it'll be interesting to see how Cricket does in his economy. However, although Shadyr does have another base up and running, it's not mining any minerals. So this is just a gas base, which you usually don't see until up around the 5 or 6 base mark. And the army sizes are actually very even. Supplies are, sorry for the supply count missing this whole time, but the supplies are actually quite even. Both of them simultaneously supply blocked, so neither one of them running away with an advantage while the other one is supply blocked. We do have a supply depot, and once again, 5 pylons being warped in. Shadyr is angry at supply blocks. Check this out. 9 supply depots, not 10 pylons warping in. This is basically the... this is rage, is actually just exactly what this is. Once again, he's got a lot of money. He's throwing it all down. Keep in mind, he just spent 1,000 minerals on pylons, making his supply cap substantially high, and then throwing down another 450 resources worth of gateways. And on essentially 1 base economy, he just won't be able to utilize these to their full extent if he was macroing properly. However, the nice thing about Protoss is that once you research Warp Gate, you don't have to wait for production cycles to finish in order to continue producing. You can simply warp in at a moment's notice. So you can actually produce 20 or 30 gateways, which sounds ridiculously excessive, but you do have the ability to warp in many units all at once and be able to compensate to some extent for kind of poor macro. Now, Cricket here, he's got a little drop coming up. He is going to be completely unobserved. He didn't pass by any observer, And this army is very out of position. This will take a second. He'll be able to get a good number of kills with this. Not entirely sure where he's going to drop. Hopefully here. We'll see how fast the reaction time is for Shadyr. No reaction yet. Now the aggression has started. Let's see what happens. Watching the units here at the front, continuing to take out units here in the back. Units lost tab is showing the tail. We have all these workers falling, and now the warping of zealots at the back. These units should be able to take this out with relatively little problem, but now there should be additional workers or units being pulled back to defend this. But now Shadyr not noticing that he has a complete army here and here to be able to help defend this. Instead, simply relying on warp-ins after having forgotten to make those into warp gates initially. However, with Blink, he was able to successfully take out that medevac. And so, in the units lost tab, while more units were lost for Shadyr, for sure, in that engagement, with the relatively high cost of a medevac and a siege tank in there, the resources lost is not that much higher. However, looking at units, Cricket did get an additional amount of... he was able to catch back up in the worker count. Now, once again, he's not producing as much as he should be in terms of workers, but he is able to... he scans, but forgets to take his army to go and attack. Ooh, the full stim to chase down and not get the observer. That's kind of painful. He does have enough medevac energy to heal that up, but remember, if there's not enough medevac energy, that's permanent damage that he's done to his units and for free against Shadyr. Now, Shadyr does have a pretty decent army. Once again, it was rising up to the exact same army value, but his army is spread out. So this will actually, with Cricket's army being very concentrated, any engagement that he has, he should be able to easily take. Now he is continuing to warp in and starting to macro. He does have a Colossus, but does the Colossus have range? No, he won't have range for another almost 2 minutes. So that's quite a lot of time. And these units being sent kind of haphazardly across the map. There's some awkward high-fiving going on. And with not all these units here, this could actually do a decent amount of damage to Cricket. Now the Marauders here are able to do substantial damage. The Marauder, should be focus firing on these things. I'm not entirely sure what's going on with the control for Cricket, but it appears to be a severe misclick. He does pull off all the workers and escapes with only a few lost, and he does successfully counter this attack, and he should resume mining here just shortly. Looking at the units tab, he did lose 2 workers, but during that time period, Shadyr has been very much emphasizing probe production, while Cricket has essentially forgotten it, it appears. And also with energy abounding, he'd be able to call down some additional mules to bolster his economy, but he does actually have quite a substantial bank. It looks like his macro is simply slipping. There's all of his their buildings here are unused, except for 2 upgrades going down. And another armory. So he wants to get double ups for his siege tanks. But with Shadyr now playing quite well, he forgot to put a worker on that gas there. That's an easy misclick, but now with the expansion, it tells you how many workers you have on each geyser and each nexus. So what happened out here actually was that he pulled workers to deal with the drop that Cricket did. But when he returned, he forgot to put anything back in place. He is remembering to spend some of that chrono boost, but without having all of the Nexi on the control group, he actually still has additional chrono boost he could be spending. His money's staying quite low, and it'll be interesting to see with this double production of Void Rays what Cricket does in response. Because remember, siege tanks, while awesome, can't shoot up. He does have a Thor on the way, but Thor's, once again, this is Wings of Liberty. He doesn't have... It does splash damage, but it does not do additional damage to... Where is that scan going down? Now, there also is quite a substantial army here. The army difference is getting quite ridiculous. And this goes all the way back to this macro concept. All of these buildings are doing nothing. We do have 2 medevacs popping out. It just appears that this army will not be enough to take on this army of Shadyr's. at this point in the game, especially with this large contingent of Void Rays here in the back. It looks like he's going for, wow, 7 Void Rays. 7 Void Rays. It looks like there are a few missile turrets, but with this number of Void Rays, this missile turrets will simply act as a way for them to charge up. He does throw down a ninja expansion. It seems to be the cool thing to do, and this best of 3 is to throw down, instead of a easily to defend third base, you go for an obscure third base that you hope no one ever notices. And it has been working so far. And now, of course, it's been the 2 minutes since the upgrade went down. And it's a multi-pronged attack. We have Void Rays heading in the back on attack move. I'm going to take out this missile turret without much of a problem. And these siege tanks here at the front, he needs to move these units back and get a much better concave and allow the siege tanks to do a lot of damage from afar. The Void Rays here in the back are continuing to do massive damage. Those 2 missile turrets not able to do near enough damage. Now, he needs to stem these units to take out the Gateway Army, because without the Gateway Army, these Colossi will fall very quickly. The siege tank on the high ground is doing substantial damage, but it doesn't appear that he'll be able to do anything against these Void Rays. That was actually a very good engagement for Cricket. Had much better positioning than control of his units. However, the multi-pronged attack, Cricket was not able to deal with these Void Rays, especially all the Marines on attack move. He was not able to all get into a good firing position at once. So with the Medivacs, he might be able to take out a large number of these Void Rays on the way back out. And he will be able to successfully defend with the late stim, unfortunately. And this Raven does survive. I don't know why he's following that for the point defense drone. That was a blunder at best. Looking at the production queue, we do have a planetary fortress going down up here, and he is beginning to use the same number of workers in a different location. And the worker count for Shadyr is approaching what would be traditionally considered the optimum number of workers. You want somewhere around 70 to 80 for most. Zerg can actually get away with closer to 100, because the expectation is that you'll turn them into spine crawlers late game, at least with Wings of Liberty, with basically Broodlord and Fester. So, interesting, the bases have now been fully utilized. However, there's a lot of workers sitting around doing nothing, and there's no apparent effort to take a third base. So he is still once again on 2-base economy, which is actually quite similar to what his opponent Cricket is on. However, it looks like a Doom drop could be coming up. However, with these Void Rays here, he might lose a substantial number of those Medivacs if he decides to go through this back pathway. He is once again attempting to retake these watchtowers. This is actually a very smart move. Wants to be able to see what's going on. He should note that all of these Void Rays are coming across the way. They are shift queued all the way around. He wanted to give a wide berth to the sensor tower. And so the Medivacs that were coming here to defend this planetary fortress are actually very, very out of position to deal with any sort of harassment here. He only has a missile turret and 6 Marines. And a battlecruiser. That does help out. However, Void Rays actually do very good against battlecruisers. So he'll have to protect this battlecruiser and hopefully get most of the damage out with these Marines. Now this drop, well, there's no Void Rays here. He's going to attack around the side. He's throwing down another missile turret to help defend. And if he can stim these Marines, he'd be able to do substantial damage. The Void Rays now focus firing on the battlecruiser, and it will go down very quickly. But he's able to do pretty substantial damage with that missile turret. He does take out an additional 2 Void Rays. The drop here, the top left-hand expansion, is going to go uncontested for the moment as this army is out of position. He does take down the gas being a very important late-game thing. However, this tank is not sieged, and this Stalker is not going to be able to get away with Blink, and he's not going to be able to engage with all of these Colossi. They were on move command and not attack move, so he was able to take out a substantial number of Stalkers and Colossi as the units were simply walking past him, but he's not able to kill off everything. There's simply just too much here to handle. However, the costly units have been removed from the game. Cricket, though, at a substantially lower number of supply, and he still has not been able to deal with this Void Ray here in the back. He does have 2 Vikings here that he could use, but he's appeared to just simply forget them. There has been quite a bit going on, and the average APM is actually much higher this game than it has been in any of the others. Now, Shadyr, with his large army with these large number of gateways and idle probes, he has a pretty substantial bank, and he has enough production to make use of it. And so while this Void Ray is continuing to go to town, he's going to move out across the map and attempt to end this game right here. This Void Ray is amassing many kills. He is a master Void Ray. He's going to continue working as there's simply not enough units to take this out. The Stim Marines will be able to push that off and successfully deflect that attack. However, now Cricket definitely knows about this impending attack. There's just simply not enough units here to make use of it. The siege tank will be very important, but they're all focus firing it immediately. The Marauders doing high damage to all the Stalkers, but simply not enough units. He needs to land these Vikings, do something, put some units in this. But with the siege tank, it's getting decent damage. He's not able to actually kill very much at this point in time. He does now have enough units here in this bunker to give the illusion of being properly defended, but in reality, he's just simply dying. There is a large number of units looking at the army side, 5,700 resources versus 750. With the blink up the ramp, the tank not able to get another shot off at all. That was a pretty cost-effective engagement for Cricket here with the tank on the high ground, but with only one tank and with these Void Rays that have come out of nowhere into the back, looks like Cricket's just simply not going to be able to withstand the economy. Now there is a single Marauder going to town here, vigorously taking out this base, but in terms of a base race with Void Rays and nothing to shoot them down, this will be very one-sided. Not the best control on the units, not the best control on these units, but there is some transferring of workers going on. I'm surprised. Oh, it looks like he did warp in another round of units here to take care of that Marauder. And it looks like this is simply going to clean things up. So a very impressive third game from Shadyr. We saw a short, intense, aggressive game, and we saw a longer game from Cricket where he took a win. But the macro of Shadyr was substantially improved. The worker count, it was really the fact that he continued to remember to make workers late game and farther into the mid game that really helped put him ahead. It's interesting that he's not attacking this planetary fortress. I really hope this factory burns down right on top of the Stalkers and crushes it. That would be awesome. We do have this planetary fortress vigorously defending, but now Cricket is basically gutted, and Shadyr is continuing to expand behind this. So once again, it was a good best-of-3 series. I don't see any way for Cricket to pull out of this one, but it really does appear to be the macro. There were some slip-ups on both sides. Early game macro slips were easily apparent. You're actually not able to support near this number of unit-producing structures on one base. However, using them with later economy is perfectly acceptable. And Cricket really forgetting to macro after about the 6 minutes into the game was really what hurt him, and his ability to... He actually had enough money to produce. It was just he wasn't producing out of all of his structures constantly. So his army side was actually quite small, and that was what I would strongly believe, as a personal opinion, what lost him the game. He had good engagements, good placement, especially at this first attack here on the main base and the natural, but you can't deny that numbers will win you battles. And so while good engagement and decent control, he's not engaging this in the best way. He should pull back and have all the Marines around. He should be repairing this, but it looks like at this point, well, he does. He's dropped off on his APM. There goes the giant GG. So, good series. It was a fun game to watch, fun game to cast, and thanks for tuning in, and we'll do another one of these some other time.